Hello everyone and welcome to a new Castlevania Symphony of the Night Developer's Diary. I'm sure most regular viewers of the channel know I've been focusing on the tutorials for the first half of this year, but I've also been taking the opportunity to learn some new development techniques for the Mega Drive, and of course I couldn't resist applying some of those new techniques to the Castlevania game. So in today's video we're going to be jumping around the castle a bit and looking at different sections and see where we can apply these new techniques. The latest section I've been working on is the marble gallery, so let's start there. And this area in particular was a bit of a challenge because, as you know, there's lots of animation here in the clocks as the pendulums swing back and forth. I already know how to do sprite animation, of course, so I could in theory put sprites here for the pendulums and have them animate that way, but of course that's a bit wasteful because the Mega Drive can only display so many sprites on screen at the same time and only 20 hardware sprites in one horizontal line on the screen. So if I were to use these as sprites, when you add the enemy sprites and Alucard and maybe sub-weapon sprites too, it could end up producing some ugly sprite flicker. So I really wanted to learn how to do animated background tiles instead. I did a few experiments by myself and managed to work out a way I could do it, but when I discussed it with other more experienced people, they said that I was doing it in a very inefficient way and is wasting a lot of system resources. And thankfully the creator of SGDK, Steph, as well as a few others, they helped out and gave some advice and came up with a much more efficient way of doing it. And of course, apart from the fact that the way of animating background tiles I was using wasn't very efficient, you can also see that I was just using a placeholder graphics here. So let's take a look at the finished article with both the new animated background tile system as well as Pyron's new graphics. And now I think you would agree that this scene is looking a lot more like the PlayStation original. While coding this section, I actually almost went down a bit of a rabbit hole about clock pendulum physics, so I wanted to get the movements of the pendulum swings as accurate as possible. That then I thought, okay, I don't want to waste too much time on this, let's just have a go and see how it looks. And I think what I've got here, it looks pretty nice, it looks very natural, so I might tweak the movement a bit later, but I think for now it will do. After having got fairly confident about being able to animate the background tiles, I wanted to think about which other areas of the castle could use this technique too. And an obvious choice is the clock tower, and even Castlevania Bloodlines had an area here where we had the gears kind of grinding in the background, but of course in this case there weren't so many frames as animation and also not as many unique tiles as Symphony of the Night. So I just wanted to do a quick experiment just to see whether the Mega Drive can handle so many tiles on display and so many tiles being changed at the same time. And because how the technique works is we change the tiles in VRAM on the fly, so that's what creates the animation effect. And as you can see here, it works okay, there's no slow down. Now obviously this is a very early, very quick experiment, and you know, obviously the colors aren't correct and the backgrounds and so on, and so also some of the tiles aren't animating correctly, but as an experiment I'm confident it'll work in the future, so I'm going to leave this to one side and I'll come back to it once I do the clock tower section. Another area of the castle where animated tiles could be effective is in this particular part, the chapel. Now of course this is the PlayStation version, as you no doubt guessed already, and this is one of those areas that lose lots of 3D effects, so it's going to be very hard to get something replicated on the Mega Drive like this. The stained glass windows in particular have this scaling effect. I guess they're polygons in the PlayStation version. Now maybe the Mega CD could have helped with this, or certainly the 32X could, but using the base Mega Drive we're going to have to be more creative. This here is the original polygon used in the PlayStation version, and as you can see I've just changed and altered it. You have to just to make it go at the angle I want it, and what we're going to have to do is, if we want to try to replicate this effect, is we're going to have to make lots of ones, bigger and smaller ones as different separate background tiles, and then eventually we're going to have to do it so that they scale in and out. But obviously we can't do the scaling on the Mega Drive. What we do is we'll save different background tiles at different stages of the scaling and then rotate them in and out, but that's going to use up a lot of ROM space, so I'm not sure if that will be the best solution. Maybe I'll just keep it very basic rather than going with this plan. I did actually have a very basic build with the Windows scaling using the animated background tiles, but I can't seem to find it, so for now just make do with this. So this is a very early little experiment I did. Obviously the floor and the ceiling using line scrolling to simulate the slight 3D effects, and in the finished in the finished version, if I do intend to do it that way, the stained glass windows will change their angle using the animated background tiles depending on where Alucard is in the room. So I'm not sure if I'd go with that solution because it wastes a lot of ROM space, but we'll see. Okay, let's leave animated background tiles to one side for now and talk about a different effect I've just learned how to do, and that is the raster effects. I had to leave the water out of this section in the demo I released over Christmas because I simply didn't know how to do it at the time, but now I do, so let's take a look at that little experiment. In this little test run, I've just done it so that the water is always rising to the top, then falls back down again, just like you saw in the Bloodlines games. I wanted to see if I can manipulate the level, not just draw it, and you can see that the palettes of Alucard and the mermen and also the background and the foreground, they all change colour too, so it's all working fine. When it comes to raster effects, it's always best to test it on real hardware because emulators don't really tend to emulate that particular effect very well, and they miss things like the CRAM dots and so on. So let's take a look at it on a CRT. Sorry for the picture quality, but it's always difficult to record CRTs like this, and you get this scanning taking place, this dark scan that always seems to appear when I try and film this screen. But you can see in this one I've kept the water level, and I've put some sprites, some flickering sprites at the water's edge, and it looks a lot better in real life than it does here. You can't really see the sprites they don't look like they're flickering like they do in this video. It looks really nice actually, the effects. So hopefully you'll get to see it once I release an updated ROM of the entrance level. Let's finish off this video by going back to the marble gallery area, specifically this corridor with all the clocks. I have a quick question for everyone. Can you notice anything different this time to the last one I showed you? If I put them side by side like this, I think the difference will become obvious. It's the resolution that has changed. Quite a few people have asked how to do low resolution mode on the Mega Drive, so as I was preparing the tutorial for that, I decided to test out a few Castlevania Symphony of the Night scenes too. As I'm sure most of you know, the horizontal resolution of the original PlayStation game was 256 pixels, and the Mega Drive's low resolution mode also has a horizontal resolution of 256. I still like the high resolution mode myself, especially, it gives you the option also to stretch the image to a widescreen display and it will still look good that way, but I want to include as many options as possible, and after looking into it, it doesn't seem it'll be too much extra work to do an additional low resolution mode. So if that's the case, and if it doesn't cause too much extra work, then I'll certainly do a version in the low resolution. The more options the better after all, so hopefully we'll end up with two resolution modes, the high resolution 320 and the low 256 resolution. And if you're interested in this topic, I'll give more details in the tutorial for that, the low resolution tutorial, which will be releasing just shortly after, a day or two after this video. Okay, so I think that just about wraps things up for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in this kind of content, then please subscribe to the channel.
I'm interested in this.
And if you want to support the channel further, I have a Patreon account.
You won't go unrewarded.
And until next time,
farewell.